The war between Israel and Iran is not just between the two. Israel has always been and will continue to be 100% supported by America, the UK, and France, Israel's founding fathers. So we're only just starting, we're only at the beginnings of this Middle Eastern war, and we can expect in weeks, if not days, another joint Israel-America attack on Iran.
You're watching CapitalCosm. My name is Danny. It is July 8th, 2025, and my guest today is none other than Simon Hunt. Simon, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. Always an honor and a pleasure.
Likewise, Simon. I mean, you're one of the few that's able to mend the geopolitics with the finance and the market. So you're one of the few who's got that ability. So let's go ahead and kick it off just by asking you the same question I ask every guest as we start off the podcast to kind of get a tempo of where we're going here. What is most prominent on your radar screen right now? What should be the main focus for people and investors out there as things unwind?
For me, my big focus is on linking the geopolitical pressure points with equity, bond markets, and global economic activity. I think that equity markets either have climbed a wall of worry or still climbing it. There's so much euphoria that one needs to think very carefully is that euphoria justified? And I think that the markets seem to be assuming that Trump is going to produce peace between NATO and Russia over Ukraine and peace in the Middle East. Both, I think, are very doubtful indeed. I think on Ukraine, Putin had hoped that he would be able to work towards a managed peace with Trump over Ukraine, but has concluded that that is no longer possible. I think we're going to see an acceleration in Russia's gaining Ukrainian territory to an extent that over the summer months, Russia will gain whatever territory of Ukraine that they need for their future security. That will include Odessa and Kiev. That will happen with or without the intrusion of certain EU countries into Ukraine. It makes no difference. What has actually happened just in the last couple of days is Russia demolished a Ukrainian military station with a new missile called the Orshnik. This is a real game changer. And I'll quote a couple of paragraphs to signal why. This signature pointed to something new. According to available data and expert observations, Oshnik carries a cluster-type penetrative warhead, lightly composed of multiple high-density submunitions. The detonation occurs only after the payload burrows into its target, design meant to maximize internal damage to hardened military infrastructure. Putin has stated that Oshnik's warheads can withstand re-entry temperatures up to 4,000 C. To survive such heat and remain stable at terminal speed, the payload would need to be encased in advanced composite materials, lightly drawing on recent developments in heat-resistant ceramics and carbon structures used in hypersonic glide vehicles. This is a major game changer, and it effectively means that Russia does not need to threaten the world with nuclear warheads. The other interesting development is that the location of these new missiles will be in Belarus. Therefore, the whole of Europe will be in the range of the Oshnik missile.
Say what you will about the Russians, they certainly are capable of producing some very interesting weaponry. The physics program that they've got over there is second to none. We have this quote here, or this report here from Donald Trump, where he said that the United States will continue to supply weapons to Ukraine. He stressed that his primary concern is defensive weapons. It was previously reported that America has suspended the supply chain of weapons, the supply of certain types of weapons to Ukraine. And right before that, earlier today, you had this report. I'll share my screen here really quick. This is from The Guardian, and it reads, U.S. only has 25% of all Patriot missile interceptors needed for Pentagon military plans. The United States has about 25% of the missiles, of the Patriot missile interceptors it needs for all military plans after burning through stockpiles in the Middle East in recent months. An alarming depletion that led to the Trump administration freezing the latest transfer of munitions to Ukraine. But that's seemingly been undone, according to Trump's comments. So while Russia has been showcasing these Oreshnik missiles, it seems like we've been here in the West and in the U.S. in particular have been running through our stockpiles in the Middle East as well as in Eastern Europe. Have we stretched ourselves too thin here?
Well, I don't know the numbers, but according to people like Colonel McGregor and Alistair Crook, the answer to that question is yes. But I think the more important question is that the Patriot missiles that Israel had were unable to prevent Iran's older ballistic missiles from penetrating their targets. In other words, the Patriot missile system is not advanced enough in modern warfare.
What was the pass-through rate? I mean, what percentage of missiles were able to pass through from Iran to Israel? Do you know that answer?
Well, I think it was a 4-to-1 ratio. But the problem is Iran was only firing their old missiles. There was only the very odd one from their newer type missiles. And even the old missiles get through.
Right. And from what I understood, Israel had about another week or two's left of supplies of interceptors ready to continue at that current
Correct.
rate. So the ceasefire
Correct.
was much needed there. When
Absolutely.
it comes to Iran resupplying, you've seen this new deal being spun up between Iran and China with respect to a Chinese fighter jet sale from China to Iran. It was originally set to be, they were originally set to buy from the Russians, but the Russians were supposedly taking too long to produce and manufacture, or not manufacture, but just sign on the dotted line, I guess, with the Iranians there. Why would the Russians kind of drag their feet here instead of just closing the
No,
deal?
I think it was a different issue. The issue is that the new Chinese J-10C fighter jet is far more advanced than the Russian one. This was actually shown up in the recent war between Pakistan and India. And in fact, I will read out a short piece I just wrote about it. The J-10C, equipped with 6 Chinese air-to-air PL missiles, were able to identify Indian aircraft from a distance of 200,000 kilometers. The PL-15s were launched from a distance of 150,000, and all 6 Indian jets were shot down. This event caused shock within Indian and Western military circles because the Indian fighter jets were France's latest ones, the Rafale 35s, I think their name was.
Okay.
So, I mean, as a close French friend of mine who knows about these things said to me that there are 2 reasons why Washington is extremely worried about China. The first, as we know, is China's super efficient and competitive manufacturing supply chain, which is being further enhanced by their adoption of automation and robotics, fueled by A1 technology. So already factories in China
AI
are using.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to scare you. Did you mean AI instead of A1?
Sorry, I meant AI. Yeah. So that now they have factories physically running with humanoids with no human beings on them. And the second point he made, and he said this is the really worrying development, is that Washington now perceives that in many high quality and important military equipment, China is now surpassing what Washington has, what America has. So this leads you to the obvious conclusion that we've known for a long time, that America's ultimate objective is to strangle China. China knows it, just as Russia knows it and Iran knows it. And this is the real war that is evolving. And it all links into the Washington's objective of destroying BRICS before that organization matures into being a real risk to America's dollar global domination and its hegemony. This is what the tariffs are about. It's what these regional wars are about. And it's what America's use of the dollar is all about. It is to destroy it is to destroy the ability of BRICS to weaken America's control of the world.
If you're looking for great deals on gold and silver, coins and bars from a company that you can trust, then you've got to check out the good folks over at Pinbeck. This year, I've really gotten to know these guys, and all I can say is you're not going to deal with a better group of people. They're a family-owned gold and silver online bullion company offering the essentials and more at industry-leading prices while always providing first-class top-tier service. That's Pinbex.com. And if you're looking to convert some or all of your retirement account into real gold and silver, give Pinbeck a call. They'll help explain the process and get you started on the right path. Your support at Pinbeck also helps support the channel. So reach out to Pinbeck today. You won't be disappointed. And make sure to tell them Danny sent you.
So what it's really about is the world going to be a unilateral one or a multilateral one? The former being led by America and the latter by Russia and China. This comes back to the close links between Russia, China, and Iran. Washington perceives Iran as being the weak link. And therefore, if you break Iran, then you're going to weaken Russia and China. That's what it's all about. So the war between Israel and Iran is not just between the two. Israel has always been and will continue to be 100% supported by America, the UK, and France, Israel's founding fathers. So we're only just starting, we're only at the beginnings of this Middle Eastern war, and we can expect in weeks, if not days, another joint Israel-America attack on Iran. Of course, when and if that does happen, which is what our sources tell us will happen, that is going to be a risk that equity markets are not yet perceiving.
And your sources are saying within days from now?
I said weeks, if not days.
Weeks, if not days. And it's perfect.
I mean, to be honest, we did expect it to happen last weekend, but on the Friday, China came out with this very forceful statement saying, we fully support Iran and we are going to support our 400 billion investment in the Middle East. It was so worded that it probably made Washington and Tel Aviv rethink what was a planned attack last weekend.
So this brings me to my next question. What is the nature of the relationship between Israel and China? Because there is there are some economic ties between the two, no?
those ties over the years, from what I gather, have weakened considerably. I can recall about 20 years ago, there were very close ties between Mossad and Beijing, but those ties, when you look to see what has happened with Israel supporting Ukraine, with Israel attacking and antagonizing Iran, those ties have, whether they've completely gone away, I don't know, but weakened, because you now have this triangular alliance between Russia, China, and Iran.
And going back to that resumption of strikes between Israel and Iran that could occur within weeks, if not days, do we see it just resume as pick up from where we left off, or should we be in anticipation of a conflict in Azerbaijan, for example, or in Pakistan, or some bordering country of Iran flaring up and thereby acting as a decoy for the strikes as well?
I'm not sure which comes first, but it's pretty clear from what I pick up that Israel and India are preparing for a war against Pakistan. So you have to ask the question, why? One, Pakistan is a Muslim country and fully supports Iran. And secondly, weaken Pakistan and you might weaken China. But more importantly, you will retain your hegemony over Eurasia, over the Eurasian continent. Azerbaijan, as you know, is borders on Iran, and a lot of its inhabitants have moved into Iran over the years, and they have been part of the Mossad group that has been bombing from inside Iran. So Azerbaijan has become an important hub for Mossad, MI6, and CIA operations. Iran, after the internal bombings, it's very clear from those inside Iran and those outside Iran who know Iran well, is that any suspicious person has been or is being rounded up. And the gossip is that ordinary people are looking over their shoulders, and anybody who looks suspicious are being pointed out to the authorities. So there is a general awareness now that these Mossad-led operations must be demolished and are being so done.
Yeah, and you also have like something along the lines of 400 and some odd thousand Afghani refugees also being deported from Iran within the span of weeks. I mean, these numbers make Tom Homan look like an amateur here in America, like the deportation numbers. What about Afghanistan? Afghanistan, we saw the episode in 2021. The Taliban took over, but is there still this U.S. influence involved in Afghanistan? Did we really leave Afghanistan? Because it's certainly acting as an oppositionary force to Iran currently.
I'm sure America did not wholly leave Afghanistan. We could bet dollars that the CIA still has its operations there, just as the CIA has its operations throughout Eastern Europe.
Right. So we'll be monitoring the situation here, but you alluded to it previously. What does this mean for the markets? What happens with the equity markets, the commodity markets, once things restart? Because it seems like the markets aren't believing. They don't seem to believe that this thing will kick back up again, at least at first glance.
Well, I think the first thing is we need to look under the hood of what's going on in the American economy. And the economy is probably on the point of recession. Incoming data is weakening. Look under the hood of the employment data, and it's not nearly as robust as being pointed out, particularly with what goes on with the birth-death model. Look at CPI being reported around 3%, whereas Larry Summers took the methodology back to 1983, and his team concluded that last year CPI was 9%, which neatly fits into what John Williams of Shadow Government Stats, who goes back to pre-Arthur Burns days in the 1970s, and came out with an inflation figure of 10.8%. And you can say that households know the real rate of inflation much better than the 300 odd economists in the Fed. If you look at retail sales or consumer spending in the first quarter, in nominal terms, it only rose by 1.2%. What you also had in the first quarter was a massive surge in imports as companies brought stuff into America before tariffs became operable. So that will have to unwind itself in the second and third quarters, probably at a point when the consumer spending is going to be much weaker. So I think there's real risk that the US economy, by the end of this year, will be in recession. Then there is a very interesting report produced by the Boston Fed. Bank lending to the 1.6 trillion private credit industry may pose systemic risk to the US financial system during an economic downturn, the Federal Reserve Boston branch warned recently. Banks, they quote, banks' extensive links to the private credit market could be a concern because those links indirectly expose banks to the traditionally higher risks associated with private credit loans. So there's another time bomb ticking. And if we're right that the American economy will soon be in recession, as other guys like Daniel DiMartino Booth are equally saying. And in fact, Dr. Lacey Hunt, in a recent interview with Adam Taggart, then this sleeping time bomb could well explode.
So I have
what I'm trying to say is that if you link what's going on geopolitically with a weakening economic and financial structure, not only in America, but in Europe too, then there are a lot of hurdles to be surmounted before you can get the economic recovery getting underway. Even then, my fear is that in order to save the system once again, the Fed and other G7 central banks are going to flood the system with liquidity, which will lead to another inflation surge reminiscent of what happened in the 1970s and 1980 and 1981, so that we don't have real recovery. We're going to have stagflation, with inflation rising faster than economic activity. That's my big fear.
And you're already kind of seeing it play out with the M2 money supply having hit all-time high levels, M2 wise. You look at this chart here, you've got a year-over-year view with respect to M2 money supply here in black, and then the CPI year-over-year change in red. And what you'll notice is that there's often a lag between the two, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. M2 money supply spikes first, followed by
Yeah.
inflation. And
Yeah.
we've recently gone through a somewhat of a spike here in M2 money supply. Here in black, we've gone from negative growth to positive growth, and the CPI has been flat the entire time. So are we in anticipation of greater inflation based off of this chart, it seems?
I think that is a very strong bet that we're going to see a resurgence of not only US but global inflation, such that we saw in 1979 and 1980, when I think CPI in America was 13%, and Paul Volcker had to push Fed funds rate up to 15%. And I think at one point it was as high as 20%.
And is this what
does that do to a highly indebted US and global system?
Yeah, how are they going to roll over the debt?
Sorry?
How are they going to roll over the debt that was initially financed at near 0% at these higher rates?
Well, I think that comes into this period of transition from low inflation to high inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So I suspect that over the next month or so, we will see 10-year treasuries coming down to 3%, and we will see a massive bear market rally in the US dollar, orchestrated probably by the Treasury, because it will be the basis for the Treasury's ability to refinance That's $7 trillion, not at 4 or 4.5%, but at 3%. That's a huge savings.
And what are the commodity? Go ahead.
Well, gold could dip a little bit further, but frankly, that's only very short term. Gold is definitely going probably over the next 2 years to $5,000 on the back of resurgence of inflation, but more particularly because of geopolitical tensions.
And what about the rest of the commodity market?
Take copper as an example. Copper prices should not be around the 10,000 level. They should be closer to 7,000. Because where is the demand? Demand is no better than just okay. And at these prices, fabricators are just sitting on their bums, using up their long-term contracts and any surpluses that they've got on hand. Because at $10,000 does not make sense. The reason why copper is at these levels is that the big boys are playing the game of assuming that Trump will introduce a 10, 15, 20, 25% tariff on the importation of copper. So we're probably seeing between 400,000 and 500,000 tons of physical copper that should have been lying in warehouses and being shipped to Europe, Asia, China, etc., actually going into America. So you're seeing this huge buildup of inventories in America on the expectation that Trump will introduce an importation tariff on copper cathode. What I believe will happen is that instead of a tariff being imposed on the importation of copper, there will be a huge tax on the exportation of copper in scrap, which in contained copper terms last year came to something like 700,000 tons of copper, of which 400,000 went into China. So we know that Trump eyes China as a competitor. So he can stop an important lump of copper going into China, then that's going to cause China some problems in his view.
Amazing. Well, this brings us to our sponsor for today's video. Tracking the moves in gold, silver, uranium, or oil. With plus 500 US, you can dive into these commodity markets through CME listed futures, offering access to futures trading on metals, energy, and more with real-time market data and 24/5 trading. Their platform is intuitive, mobile-friendly, and packed with advanced tools like stop loss and trailing stops to help manage risk effectively. Start trading with just a $100 minimum deposit. Enjoy free platform access and take advantage of up to a $200 commission-free welcome bonus after account verification. Plus 500's Futures Academy and 24/7 live support make it easy for beginners and pros alike to navigate the markets confidently. Regulated by the CFTC and NFA, you can have peace of mind trading with a trusted broker while your funds are secure in a segregated account. Ready to explore commodity futures? Click on the link below to apply for your account and trade smarter. And a quick disclaimer, trading futures involves the risk of loss and is not suitable for every investor. Not all applicants will qualify. Simon, we're looking at this spike in gold, and you're seeing this paper market become unwind. If the paper market continues to detach from the physical market in gold, does this lead to other detachments in other commodity markets as well?
That's a very good and important question. It's a very difficult one to answer. When we look at the base metals, the two big commodity exchanges should have their answer. That if people hold too much, as it were, paper positions in relation to their physical positions, then the exchanges force them to reduce their paper positions more in line with their physical. But in gold, I think it's a very dangerous position, and it can only lead to a further resurgence in the price of gold.
And do the paper markets in these other commodity markets also begin to detach once the main players in the gold market start seeing gold prices start to run away from them as well? Does it create a daisy chain effect down the rest of the commodity complex, in your view?
No, because the drivers of gold are different to the drivers of the base metals like copper. The long-term drivers of copper are physical consumption. What is the macro environment? Gold, it's different. Gold is the hedge against paper and is the secure asset in times of political tension.
Understood. Well, I think that covers pretty much everything that there is to talk about here, Simon. Unless you have any other ideas, anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap things up here?
Well, I think the conclusion is very simple. Despite what markets and their analysts are saying, we are entering a very volatile and dangerous 5 to 10 years. So security must be the dominant policy for households. We'll enter a period in about a year's time when food prices will be soaring. There'll be a lot of shortages of key stuff like meat, grains, fruit, etc. So stock up whilst you can and before prices take off.
Yeah.
Inflation is coming, so prepare for it.
And a lot of people have taken their foot off the gas pedal ever since Trump has been president, because I presume a lot of preppers feel like everything's happening, everything's taken care of now. But from the sounds of it, it's au contraire. There's still very much dangers ahead. Well, Simon, thank you so much for your time here, my friend. Where can people find you if they want to hear and see more of your work?
Simon-Hunt.com.
Okay, we'll have to link that down below. Well, Simon, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, drop us a like and comment. Go, Simon, go in the comment section. If you disagreed with anything, that's fine too. But let me know what you disagreed on. Write your comments down below. I do, in fact, read the comments. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. And liking, commenting, subscribing, doing all that stuff is your way of pushing this video in the algorithm and this channel in the algorithm in exposing this type of content to more people. It's an easy way to support the channel, and a little bit does go a long way. If you'd like to take it a notch further, then check out my Substack at capitalcosm.substack.com. Become a paid member and get access to all my stuff early, ad-free, and uncensored. And with the added bonus of recommending me guests and topics and asking questions to any of my future guests down the line. So with all that said, thank you so much for coming on, Simon. And guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Pleasure as always.